Snow had started falling early that morning, light as mist, cold as dried sea salt. From the window of her art room, Clara Morrow stood silently, one hand resting on the full curve of her belly beneath a pale gray sweater. The baby shifted inside her, as if pressing back against her palm, a small but vivid motion in the stillness of a brittle winter. The wooden house sat on the edge of Harborstead, its back nestled against a pine forest, its front facing the bay. It was the place Gavin had called the perfect spot to raise a child, back when they had agreed to leave New York City behind. Clara had pictured herself painting under soft sunlight, their child playing on the porch, Gavin mowing the lawn or reading, an idyllic life she had believed in. Now, 8 months into her pregnancy, she felt like the only soul truly living in that house. Clara had once been a promising landscape painter in Manhattan, known for her seasons on canvas series, exhibited at independent galleries across the West Village. She didn't care for glittering parties or spotlights. She loved quiet mornings scented with linseed oil, soft classical music in the background, and watercolor bleeding into thick paper. Gavin Morrow, her husband, whom she met at a corporate art auction, was the opposite. He was a creative director for an international travel firm. Polished, charming, admired. Clara had thought he was a rare stillness amid noisy crowds, the man who had bought her very first painting and said, "I don't fully understand it, but it makes me long for something I've never had." They married 2 years later. When Gavin was offered a promotion and transfer to the Northeastern branch, he convinced Clara to leave the city, to take a break from painting, and start a new chapter together. Clara, believing in love, had agreed. She gave up her rented apartment in Brooklyn, withdrew from 2 fall exhibitions, and followed Gavin to the seaside town of Harborstead, his mother's hometown. The wooden house they bought had a bright attic space meant to be her studio, but Clara rarely used it. The early months of her pregnancy passed in anxiety and exhaustion. Gavin, who had once been excited, began disappearing, citing work, pressure, and eventually, his mother. Lucille Morrow, Clara's mother-in-law, was a staunch traditionalist with a patronizing air. "What can an artist even do for my son?" she had once said flatly at dinner. Gavin had laughed it off then. Now, he said nothing at all when his mother made such remarks. "Clara, are you okay?" Maya's voice came through the speaker on the kitchen counter, pulling Clara out of her reverie. Maya Whitfield was the town's OBGYN, and one of the few friends Clara had kept in touch with since leaving the city. "I'm fine, just a little tired." Clara smiled faintly, her voice soft. Maya paused for a beat, as if choosing her words. "Clara, don't be upset if I ask directly. Where's Gavin? You said last week he'd be going with you to your final ultrasound." "He had an urgent meeting. In Florence." Clara lowered her gaze as she rinsed a glass, trying to keep her tone even. "Wait, Florence? As in Italy?" Maya's surprise was impossible to mask. "Yeah, he went with his mother." Clara's answer landed like a confession. On the other end of the line, Maya fell silent for so long, Clara thought the call had dropped. Then a quiet sigh, and her voice softened. "Clara, if you need anything at all, even in the middle of the night, call me, okay?" Clara nodded, though Maya couldn't see it. "Thank you." After the call ended, Clara stood in the still kitchen for a long while. No footsteps, no scent of morning coffee, no trace of a man in the house. Gavin had left 2 days ago with nothing more than a line. "Mom says I need a break. You're strong. You'll be fine." Clara had nodded at the time. No crying, no pleading. But today, as snow piled thicker on the steps outside and the cold crept into her bones, she knew. She wasn't fine. Her hand drifted to her phone again. This time, she scrolled through her contacts and stopped at the name, Charlie Elwood. Charlie was a retired taxi driver who still occasionally gave rides to the elderly around town. Clara had met him once at a bookstore where the owner had said, "Charlie's reliable in the snow. If your due date's close, you might want to keep his number." Clara hadn't thought she'd actually use it, but now, as the wind picked up and a low, twisting ache began to pulse deep in her belly, like the first ripple of a storm, Clara knew. The day was coming. The wall clock ticked steadily in the quiet living room, marking 3:48 p.m. Outside the window, the light snowfall from earlier had thickened into dense white curtains, blotting out the row of pines lining the front porch. Clara sat in the armchair near the fireplace, clutching a cup of ginger tea now gone lukewarm, her feet propped on a soft cushion. The first contraction came like a sudden squeeze. Not sharp, not unbearable, just enough to make her freeze, her tea tilting slightly, a chill rushing down her spine. She closed her eyes, breathed slowly. Just Braxton Hicks. False labor. I've read about this. It's fine. But 10 minutes later, the pain returned. Deeper this time, longer. And again after that. Clara fumbled for her phone, opened the app to time her contractions. 3 and 30 minutes, even spacing. A sign. Gavin had once promised to attend prenatal classes with her at the town's medical center. He went to the first session, sat scrolling through his phone the entire time, then claimed work was too hectic. "Just call me when the real thing starts," he'd said, pressing a kiss to her forehead like that could make up for everything else. Clara pushed herself up, moving cautiously toward the window. Wind lashed against the glass. The front yard lay under a blanket of white, untouched. Her SUV sat buried beneath the snow, rear tires already unreliable. She wouldn't risk it. She unlocked her phone, called Gavin, one long ring, then voicemail. She called again. Same. A third time, she left a message. "I think labor's starting. The snow's too heavy. I can't get to the hospital alone. I need you." She sank into the chair, held her breath. 1 minute. 5. No reply. Her eyes drifted to another name in her contacts. Charlie Elwood. His name lit up on the screen. Her hand trembled for a moment. Then, decisively, she pressed call. 1 ring. 2. 3. "Clara?" His voice came through, deep and raspy, but warm. "You called just in time. Are you all right?" I'm not sure," she answered, her voice tight. "I think I'm in labor. And Gavin's not picking up. The snow's bad. I can't drive." A pause on the other end. "Put on your thickest coat, non-slip shoes, and be ready in 15 minutes. Lynette has my main car, but I've still got the old one for bad roads. Don't worry." "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to. Let's get you to the hospital. Everything else can wait." Exactly 15 minutes later, the soft yellow headlights of Charlie's old Dodge pickup pierced through the snowfall outside her house. Clara stood in the doorway, one hand bracing her belly, the other pulling a small suitcase she had packed the week before. The wind slapped her cheeks. Each step off the porch felt like a victory. Charlie stepped down from the truck, tall and wiry in a thick brown coat. He opened the passenger door, walked toward her, gently took her bag, and steadied her with a hand around her back. "Take your time. I've got plenty." Inside the truck, the heater sputtered to life, barely warm, but still better than the wind outside. Charlie stowed the suitcase in the back, climbed in, and buckled his seatbelt. "We'll take the longer route. Not the fastest, but the safest." Clara turned to glance at the house shrinking behind her in the snow. A dull shadow fell over the upstairs window, their bedroom. No lights, no messages. "Don't look back there, Clara," Charlie said, without needing to ask. "What matters is ahead. Trust me." On the road to the hospital, as the truck bumped over frozen ruts and drifted snow, Clara felt the contractions growing stronger, more regular. But she didn't panic, didn't cry. Beside her sat a stranger, one who had shown up when the person closest to her didn't. Outside, the white storm erased every path. But inside that truck, for the first time in days, Clara felt like she was finally being taken where she needed to go. The seventh contraction made Clara breathe in sharp bursts, her fingers gripping the edge of the leather seat in the pickup truck. Charlie glanced at her quickly before turning his eyes back to the whiteout road. "We're almost there. Hang on, sweetheart. You're doing great." Clara nodded faintly, her back drenched in sweat despite the sub-zero wind outside. She wasn't sure what was trickling down her cheek, tears, sweat, or melting snow. Maybe all three. The emergency sign of St. Elora Hospital glowed ahead, a modest 3-story building rising like a lit-up island in a sea of ice. The truck pulled up to the emergency entrance. A young nurse and 2 staff members rushed out with a stretcher, while Charlie steered toward the parking lot, giving her a gentle wave. "I'll wait." Clara was wheeled inside through a veil of warm vapor. The fluorescent lights blurred above her, sounds overlapping, voices, footsteps, pages being called, and then suddenly a familiar voice anchored her. "Clara!" Maya appeared, white coat on, her hair tied back in a neat bun. Her face was focused, but her eyes were full of gentleness. "You made it," Clara whispered. "I'm here," Maya said, reaching for her hand, steady, warm. "I'll be delivering your baby, no one else." The delivery room was prepped within minutes. Clara changed into a hospital gown, lay down, fetal monitor straps wrapped around her belly. The rhythmic sound of the baby's heartbeat filled the silence. Thump, 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 thump. Strong, clear, steady. 4 centimeters, Maya announced after checking. "A few more hours to go, but you're doing beautifully." Clara exhaled slowly, her eyes fixed on the ceiling above. "Maya, if something happens, if I don't—" "No what-ifs," Maya cut in, giving her hand a firm squeeze. "You're going to do this. I'm here. The team's ready. And you're stronger than anyone I've ever known." A choked laugh escaped Clara's throat, followed by tears. For the first time since Gavin left, she allowed herself to break down. Not because she was weak, but because, finally, she was safe. 3 hours later. The clock read 3:22 a.m. The final contraction surged through her like a crashing wave, pushing Clara beyond every limit, and then came the cry. Raw, clear, piercing the silence like first light at dawn. "It's a girl," Maya said, and in that moment, Clara wept fully. They laid the baby on her chest. Warm skin, tiny heartbeat, fingers curling around her mother's as if to declare, "I'm here now." Clara gazed at her. The baby had damp black curls, flushed skin, and an expression that seemed almost solemn. "Hello there," Clara whispered, her chest aching with love. "Welcome to the world." Once things had calmed, Maya turned to her, voice gentler now, almost hesitant. "Has Gavin called back?" Clara looked at her phone on the bedside table. The screen was blank. No texts, no missed calls. "No." Maya was silent for a long moment. Then, with the quiet authority of someone balancing friendship and medical duty, she said, "You know, not showing up is still a choice, and maybe, in this case, it's a gift. You don't need someone who didn't choose to be here for this." Clara nodded. Not bitter, not angry, only truth and freedom. She turned to her daughter, her tiny eyes now open, gazing up as if already reading her mother's soul. "You won't grow up waiting for anyone," Clara whispered. "I'll teach you how to walk forward on your own." Outside the window, the sky had begun to lift. Gray clouds peeled back, revealing a pale blush of pink beyond the treetops. The storm had passed, and something new had just begun. 3 days after Clara gave birth, the snow on the roof of St. Elora Hospital began to melt. Winter wasn't over in Harborstead, but the sky had softened, tinged with silver light. In room 206, Clara sat up in bed, her newborn daughter wrapped snugly in a pale gray blanket against her chest. She had named her Elise, a name that came to her the moment those tiny eyes locked onto hers that morning, as if it had always belonged to this child. Maya had just left to start her next shift. Clara was writing thank you notes for the nurses and doctors when the door swung open. Gavin. He stood in the doorway, snow dusting the shoulders of his expensive overcoat, a brown leather suitcase at his feet. In his hands was a bouquet of white lilies, Clara's least favorite flower, one she was allergic to. His face was tight with tension, red from the cold, but it was his eyes that chilled her more than any winter wind. Not an ounce of urgency, not a trace of remorse. Clara. Gavin stepped into the room, glancing around as if to confirm he had the right place. I got here as soon as I could. My flight was delayed because of the storm. Clara looked at him for a long moment. 3 days. I know, I'm sorry, but you know my mother. Gavin, Clara interrupted, her voice quiet but firm enough to stop him. Don't blame your mother. Don't blame Florence. Don't blame the snow. No one but you. He faltered. Do you know who drove me to the hospital? Clara asked, placing Elise gently into the bassinet beside her. A 70-year-old retired taxi driver named Charlie Elwood. He's not my husband. He had no responsibility to me. But when I called, he came. Clara, And you, she continued, raising her eyes to meet his. When I called, you didn't answer. While I was in pain, you were somewhere in Florence, drinking red wine with your mother. He looked down, awkwardly setting the bouquet on the bedside table. I didn't know you'd go into labor so soon. Neither did I, Clara said softly. Babies don't wait. Gavin swallowed hard. So, it's a girl? Clara nodded. Her name is Elise. He stepped closer, peering down into the bassinet. Elise furrowed her brow in her sleep, her tiny lips pursed. Gavin made a low, unreadable sound in his throat. No tears, no visible emotion. I'll take you both home, he said, as if this were simply a matter of packing up and returning to the life they'd left behind. Clara remained still, subtly shifting to block the light from Elise's face. Which home? She asked, voice calm but cutting. Our home, in Harborstead, Gavin said. I set up the crib already. Mom's been fixing up the guest room for when she visits. You won't have to worry about a thing. Before Clara could respond, a knock echoed once, followed by the door swinging open without invitation. Clara Morrow entered, tall and poised, wrapped in a taupe wool coat, her silk scarf perfectly knotted. Her heels tapped the linoleum with the precision of a metronome. Thank goodness I caught the airport shuttle in time, she announced. Clara, where's my granddaughter? Her voice rang out as if the hospital room were her own parlor, and Elise a family heirloom to be inspected. Clara held her baby closer, eyes never leaving Lucille's. You're just in time, she said slowly. Lucille approached the bassinet, leaned forward, but Clara turned her body, shielding Elise. She's better looking than I expected, Lucille remarked, in a tone better suited to assessing horse lineage than newborns. What are you doing here? Clara asked plainly. Lucille gave a light laugh. Clara, don't be dramatic. I am her grandmother, after all. And Gavin is your husband. Of course you're coming home. No, Clara said simply. My daughter doesn't need you, and I'm not going back to the house that abandoned me while I was in labor, in a snowstorm. Lucille paused, caught off guard, but recovered quickly. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. Postpartum instability is well documented. A rash decision now could affect Elise for life. Gavin said nothing. As usual. Clara turned to him. You're letting your mother speak for both of you? He opened his mouth, but no words came. Clara placed Elise back in the bassinet and stood. Every word that followed was carved in ice. 3 days. I waited 3 days for a text, a call, anything. I got nothing. And today, after just a few words about taking us home, your mother walks in here like I'm the nanny being let go. Lucille straightened. You're being overly sensitive. A good mother doesn't let emotions override reason. Clara gave a small, humorless smile. You're right. A good mother wouldn't raise her daughter in a house where the grandmother disrespects her, and the father disappears when she needs him most. And a good wife wouldn't return to the arms of the 2 people who left her behind. Lucille's eyes narrowed. You don't get to make this decision alone. This is family. No, it's your family, not mine anymore. Clara turned to Gavin, giving him one final look, the kind reserved for someone who used to be everything. Elise will carry the Morrow name on paper, but she'll carry my strength in her blood. And on the days you're allowed to visit, Gavin, you'll need to learn how to show up on time. Lucille was speechless. Gavin finally managed a whisper. Clara, I just want what's best for her. The best thing, Clara replied, is for her not to grow up thinking men who never say no to their mothers are the ones to rely on. No one said another word. Clara stepped forward, lifted Elise into her arms. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. But Elise's eyes fluttered open then, staring up at her mother, as if she understood. You chose me, not the past, not comfort. Me. Lucille left first, her heels clacking faster than before, like retreat drums. Gavin lingered a moment, then followed quietly. The door clicked shut. Clara stood by the window, holding Elise close. Morning light slanted through the glass, soft and golden. Welcome to the world, Elise, she whispered, where we bow to no one. That afternoon, a small delivery truck pulled up in front of the cottage, nestled at the end of a quiet cobblestone street, just a 10-minute walk from Harborstead's town center. Clara stepped out of Maya's car with Elise in her arms. The early spring wind still carried a chill, but sunlight streamed more confidently through the bare trees lining the porch. Elise slept soundly in a white swaddle, her head resting on her mother's shoulder, one tiny hand curled around the fabric as if already reaching for the world. Small, Maya remarked with a smile as she carried in a blanket and backup bottle. But a hell of a lot sturdier than the Morrow's mansion. Clara laughed. And no gatekeeper named Lucille. The house had just 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen that opened into a cozy living room, and an attic Clara had claimed as her studio. Its window looked out toward a small wooded grove. No ocean, no scenic bay, nothing prestigious like the old place. But it had what Clara had once lost. Quiet. That evening, after Maya had gone and Elise had fed and fallen back asleep, Clara sat at the wooden table by the window, cradling a mug of chamomile tea. Her eyes drifted across boxes of paint and empty canvases stacked in the corner. The smell of raw canvas, dried pigment, and the wind rustling at the windows stirred something. A piece of herself she thought she'd buried with the loneliness of pregnancy. She set the mug down, crossed the room, and opened a wooden box of brushes long untouched. Each one had been carefully cleaned, neatly laid in place, as if waiting for her return. Clara chose the largest canvas she had, setting it upright in the center of the room. No sketching, no measurements. She simply picked up a brush and began, bold, layered strokes like crashing waves. Not landscapes this time, She painted a newborn's eyes, wide, silent, filled with both wonder and something deeper, unconditional presence. Then a tiny hand gripping an adult finger. Then a trail of white snow cutting through the night. She didn't stop until nearly midnight. Elise slept peacefully in her bassinet, shifting occasionally but never crying. Clara would pause now and then to check on her, then return to her palette. Every stroke was a memory. Every layer of paint, a day she survived. And the painting itself, a testament not only to the child she had brought into the world, but to the woman she had brought herself back to. A week later, Clara sent an email to Maple and Birch, the gallery that had once exhibited her work before she left New York. She attached 3 photos under the title, Series, Birth and Rebirth. Less than 2 days later, they replied. 1 sentence only. When you're ready, the gallery is ready. Somewhere else, Gavin checked his phone. He saw a new post on the Maple and Birch website, a woman holding a baby standing in a sunlit studio. Behind her, an unfinished canvas. The wind stirred the curtains beside her. Her face wasn't visible. There was only the caption, "She didn't go back. She went forward." Gavin tapped the image once, but he left no comment. 1 month after Elise was born, Gavin sent an email. No call, no text, just a neatly written message, polished and formal, like a pitch to an investor. Clara, I think it's time we sit down and talk respectfully. I still hope to be part of Elise's life. I have a right to be her father. Clara read it and smiled. Not bitterly, just the kind of smile someone wears when they've long known this day would come. The day the man who once walked away would return, asking for a supporting role in the life he once deemed irrelevant. Her reply was brief. Friday, 2 p.m. at my lawyer's office. The conference room on the 2nd floor of the law firm overlooked Harborstead's Central Square. Not luxurious, not intimidating, just formal enough to make one thing clear. This was where things were put into writing and signed in permanent ink. Clara arrived on time. Elise was at home with Maya. She wore a cream turtleneck sweater, her hair tied back, and carried a slim folder. No jewelry except for a thin band on her right hand, not a wedding ring. Gavin arrived 10 minutes late, in a navy dress shirt, his polished appearance just slightly strained. He gave a polite smile as he pulled out a chair across from her. Clara nodded. No handshake, no small talk. Her lawyer, a middle-aged woman with eyes like fine-edged steel, opened calmly. Mr. Gavin, we've received your formal request for access to Elise. Clara is open to discussing terms, with some clear conditions. Gavin opened his mouth to speak, but Clara raised a hand gently, cutting him off. No need to circle around, Gavin. I'll say it plainly. Her gaze was cool, her voice calm. You weren't there when I went into labor. You weren't there when I called for help. You weren't there when I signed my discharge papers and walked out with a newborn in a snowstorm. You weren't there when Elise screamed through her first 3 nights with colic. But you were in Florence, with your mother, drinking wine, telling yourself you needed a break. Gavin said nothing. Clara continued. Because of that, I don't trust you're capable of being a father, at least not during the early years. He sighed. Clara, I know I messed up. I want to make it right. You can't just shut me out of her life because it's not out of anger. Clara cut in. It's out of principle. She placed a file folder on the table and slid it toward him. Inside were Elise's immunization and medical checkup records, weekly photos of Elise, labeled and dated, without fail, a legal document naming Clara as sole guardian for Elise's first 7 years. You may visit her on my terms, public places, under supervision, 30 minutes per week, You'll have no say in her healthcare, education, or any legal decisions until she's 7. Gavin froze. 7? Are you punishing me? Clara sat straighter. Her voice dropped lower, sharper. No, Gavin, this isn't punishment. This is consequence. You want to be present at the end of the story, while I had to rewrite the entire middle on my own. Gavin closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. The confidence was gone, replaced by something close to regret, but not close enough for forgiveness. So, after she turned 7? Clara looked him straight in the eye. After 7, I'll let Elise decide, and you'll have to answer to her, not with emails or promises, but with presence. If you still want a chance, that's the only way. Gavin's lawyer gently touched his arm, signaling him to stop. He nodded, offering no further resistance. For the first time, Gavin was silent because he had nothing left to say. When they stepped out of the conference room, the late afternoon sun spilled across the stone steps. Gavin turned to say something. But Clara was already walking away. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. There was no cold wind in Clara's heart anymore. No hollow space Gavin could still lay claim to. She had long since walked beyond the place where he left her broken. And if there was ever a word for revenge, it was this moment, when the one who walked away had to ask for a seat in the story she was now writing with her own free hands.